Howdy, this is Mackenzie Franklin from SideGame LLC here in Colorado Springs, Colorado. I'm joined by my friend Dan, the chairman of the board, as we go into our top 10 board game zombies. Dan, how's your spooky season? How's October going? And in general, welcome to the channel.
Thank you, Mackenzie. Yeah, I'm very well, thank you. Yeah, October's been good. I was very misled when you first said board game zombies because I thought we were talking about zombie board games, and I don't think I've ever played a single good one. So I'll let you explain. I'll let you explain what you mean by board game zombies.
That's a great way to introduce this. So when I say board game zombies, I'm talking about a game that we played a long time ago, basically forgot it or completely dropped it, and then brought it back and we're like, oh, this game is actually great. Why is this not in my rotation? So that's the idea behind this list. And this is something, does it happen very often for you, Dan?
Very rarely, actually. We were just discussing before the stream that when you first mentioned the list, I thought it'd be really easy, and I actually did struggle to scrape a few games together here. And some of these weren't necessarily older games, but ones that did fall out of favor for one reason or another, and now I really enjoy them again. So that's normally where, well, most of my games are following that pattern, really.
That makes a lot of sense. And we're in this area where we're playing a bunch of games. So if something doesn't super stand out, it's hard to return back to it. Or maybe we've just played it enough that we've moved on, and maybe an expansion is the only thing that really brings it back into that limelight. So I'm curious to hear what your stories are on these different games. Before we begin, I do want to quickly shout out, if you haven't already subscribed to our channel, make sure that you do. It's the best way to help us grow. And for those of you who already subscribed, thank you so much for the continued support. And if you take a look in the description of the video, you can also find Dan's channel over at Chairman of the Board, and make sure you're subscribed there as well. Dan puts out videos that talk about new games that he's playing. My favorite videos that he puts out are the ranking videos of all of his games that he plays in groups of 10. So it's a cool way to see not only what Dan's playing, but how they stack up against each other and give you an overview of his month of games. Dan, are there any games or videos that you're looking forward to playing or putting out in these next couple of weeks?
Yeah, so I played some new games actually. Ones from 2023 releases. So I've got upcoming reviews of Dragon Keepers, which is a new card game, as well as Wild Tiled West, and even some older ones as well, such as The Rich and the Good, which was kind of an older economic game that's just been reprinted. So yeah, a few different games there.
All right. So go make sure you are subscribed over to Dan's channel at Chairman of the Board. Links in the description below, and see what's coming out new from him. And one last thing before we get into the list, I do want to give a shout out to our channel partner. This is Into the AM Studios. They're working with SideGame LLC to give you access to cool graphic tees. I wear them because I like them. I enjoy the way that they feel as well as the artwork. And I'm a big guy, so having shirts that fit well and make me comfortable, it's something that I am ready to shout out about. If you use our coupon code in the description, it's SideGame Strong, you can get 10% off of your order, and then we'll also receive direct kickback for that. So it's a way to help out the channel without necessarily purchasing board games. So if you're looking for that, if you're interested in that at all, that would be a great help to us. Plus, it's something that I truly do recommend. So that is promo code SideGameStrong. I'm sporting one of their Japanese tees here. It reminds me a lot of one of the cities that I used to live in Japan, in Shizuoka, and it's got that same setting of the Mount Fuji in the background as well as the nightlife there. So I thought that was a pretty cool one, and it fits my style, I think. Dan, anything else before we start up our lists with our top 10 board game zombies?
No, I'm good to go, I think.
All right, let's do it. Starting off with, this will be a combined top 10, so we're doing 5 each. And Dan, we'll go ahead and start with your number 5. Go for it.
Okay, so yeah, my number 5 is a game called Age of War. So this is a pretty silly little Yahtzee variant, actually. As you're just rolling a bunch of dice and then trying to claim these cards by matching the different symbology on those cards. But the twist on this one is that when you win a card, you can actually win it back off somebody else. So you've got this kind of player competition. You're trying to collect sets of different types to get extra few points, basically. This is really good player interaction for a simple dice rolling game. Now, the reason I call this a board game zombie is because I've had this game in my collection for God knows how many years. One of the first kind of small box games that I had. I used to play this with kind of non-gamer friends and my ex-girlfriend who wasn't really a gamer. So I had a bit of sentimental value with this one, but I never really brought it off the shelf anymore. But recently, after not having played this for a long time, I thought I'll pull this back off the shelf, give it another go, and I had a really good time with it. And yeah, I'm really up for playing it some more already. So I know you're not a big fan of this one, Mackenzie. It's very lucky. It's very boisterous, but I enjoy it a lot, and it's always gone down a treat with me. And I've just had some new life injected into it after playing it again recently, after not being played for so long. So that is Age of War, my number 5.
Believe it or not, this is one of the first board games I ever played. So back in Hawaii, I had a friend, Jeremy, who loved this game. We played it all the time. He called it Age of Salt because of the salt-inducing behavior that it would induce as you are. When you roll, you can either get these cards that are in the center with less symbols, or you can steal them from another person. And then Monopoly style, once you have all the color, no one can take those things. So you can pile onto the person who's winning, and it causes the game to fluctuate. So I do think that there's some merit to that for sure. I think the reason it put me a little sour was I felt like it just wouldn't end. It was one of those things where it's just like, I'm playing Age of War for an hour and a half. I don't know if I'm ready for this. So
Yeah, it's got one of those things where if you're not winning, you don't want the game to end, of course, and you start snatching off each other. And the only person who wants to end it is the person winning. So it does have a bit of potential to go on long, but I've never had a super long game, unfortunately. But maybe that's going to happen one day. I'm not sure.
well, I'm glad you're loving Age of War, and if you're looking for a quick dice game, maybe quick, check out Age of War. So that is Dan's number 5. Moving on to my number 5. This is a classic and one of the first board games that I've played. And then I stopped playing it for like 3-4 years, 5 years, because I started playing this, I would say, in 2015, 2014. And it just recently came back with the release of the second edition. I was like, oh, this looks cool. And it has some updates. Maybe this will be a little bit intriguing. This is Seven Wonders. So Seven Wonders second edition in particular is my biggest board game zombie. And the new edition features awesome new artwork, new graphic design layout, and then an entire redux of the different symbols. Very small changes, but if you've played it a bunch, they will be changes that you'll recognize and understand. Seven Wonders is a drafting game where you're trying to get as many victory points as possible through different point venues. A lot of it has to do with set collection, trying to get majorities in different things, military and science, as well as special abilities and powers. And I think one of the biggest things about this game is the fact that the expansions also got redone versions, and the new aesthetic and art presentation just looked wonderful. And it was a huge improvement in something that made me exciting to play. And then as soon as we started playing it again, I realized, oh, this game is actually insanely good. And even just the addition of a single card from one leader or from the cities, adding some extra choices. And I was impressed with the newest expansion, Armada, as well. They were just so much fun to explore, re-explore, and this is hitting a rotation where this is a game that I'm asking to play quite a bit. The simultaneous nature of this makes it engaging and exciting, and I love the direct competition between your direct neighbors, as well as looking at what other cards people are drafting, so there's reasons to look at your things as well as other people's. It's a blast, and I see myself continue playing this, and I'm glad that it came back from the dead as a board game zombie. So I love Seven Wonders, and I think the second edition is a beautiful edition that makes it a bit more user-friendly with the way that these symbols are organized and arranged. It took a lot of inspiration from Seven Wonders Duel and took that same card layout and applied it here. And I think it's perfect. Dan, I'm sure you've played this game. Are your thoughts as high as mine on it? What do you think of Seven Wonders?
Well, funnily enough, I have played this game, but it was during my first year into the hobby, and I've not played it since. So I reckon if I played this game, it would be a zombie for myself as well. Because I remember when I first played it, I was very much in that mindset of, well, the heavier the better. I was in that kind of elitist mindset where I only played the heaviest of games and didn't really see the merit of some of these, simpler evergreens. So I think if I played this one now, I would probably appreciate it a lot more than I did back then. I'm a big fan of Seven Wonders Duel, so I don't see why I wouldn't be a fan of this one as well. So really need to get this one played again.
There's a bunch of nuance to it, and I think a single expansion is all you need. I do think that core game is pretty basic, but still engaging and exciting because of the different venues. And you also have the combination of the boards that give you special abilities and powers. So you do have unique starting setups for each character and player with the different resource icons. But that core decision of, do I keep, do I play, do I sell? And there is hate drafting that's baked into it that also gives you an advantage. It introduces a lot of concepts, but also keeps their relevancy throughout the expansions. So it's not something that just introduces, but makes them a feature of this drafting game. So Wonders is amazing. If you haven't played it, try it. There's a reason it has like 20 awards on the box. Give this one a try for sure. So that's Seven Wonders. That's my number 5. Dan, what do you got for your number 4 board game zombie?
Yeah, so my number 4 is a relatively popular game. This is one called The Quest for El Dorado. It's actually a deck building racing game. Now, I'm generally not the biggest fan of deck building. I don't dislike it, but it's not one of my favorite mechanisms or features in games. But this is one that actually, I suppose, rather than not playing it for a long time, it was one that was a bit more of a grower for me. I started it feeling a little bit underwhelmed by it, and not really impressed at all. Just maybe a big part of that was the hype. It was very popular. And I think it was quite a long time before well, not a huge time, but a little break before we played it again. I thought we'll give it another go before we maybe cull it. And I enjoyed it a little bit more. And then, let's give it another go. Then enjoyed it a little bit more again. So this was kind of more of an incremental zombie, one that got slightly better each time I played it. And it's got to a point now where I think this is a really nice game, one that flows very, very nicely. Simple deck building. It's not over convoluted, just collecting symbols in these decks to fight your way through this different terrain and hopefully race to the finish. You do have to roll with the punches here. Sometimes you're going to draw cards that don't work for you, where your opponent gets a perfect card in the hand each time and goes flying. But it's only about half an hour, 45 minutes. And these kind of games are just landing for me at the moment. And I think it's a very nice, self-contained deck builder game with that racing feature hybrid. And yeah, it's really well executed. And yeah, definitely got to a position now that it's leagues ahead of what it was when I initially played it. So is it a zombie? In terms of my enjoyment, I think it is. So yeah, that's my number 4, The Quest for El Dorado.
So you said you don't necessarily seek out deck building games. What about racing games? Where does this stack up in that style of game?
Um, it's up there for me. It's up there. I mean, it's the hybrid nature of it. I think that's what I like about it. I mean, there are other racing games that I like, but this one is unique because of that deck building aspect. So yeah, I quite rate it well rounded in different fields, really. So yeah, got not really much bad to say about it after all this, or after all the original disappointment. I don't know if that's a strong word, but I was certainly underwhelmed when I first played it.
I think that just being on this list shows merit to pretty much any game. The fact that these are great games, you might just miss it at first. And I think that's a big
Yeah.
thing, that sometimes a first play can fall flat. And so having an opportunity, especially with games like this, to play more than once and enjoy even more, I think this is a good highlight for games in general. For the deck building cards, are there any standout cards you like in this game?
I think it's the Jack of all trades one that lets you just go through anything. I like that one.
Versatility over power.
Yeah,
I think I'm on the other side. I like getting a 6 that's hyper specific or something crazy. Like, give me some giant movement. Yes, I'll take it. Like, look at that Jungle Explorer 6. Yes, I'll take it.
That's a good one. Yeah.
Sweet. So that is number 4, The Quest for El Dorado. All right. So my number 4 is a zombie that I had in the back of my head for a long time. It's a game that I had played once. I played like an introductory scenario to it and never touched it again. A friend of mine had it, so I was like, oh, maybe we'll play it next time. Never happened. So it's just like, okay, never going to play this game. If I see it, I'll try to pick it up, but it's hard to get. It was out of print. But then randomly, I received like a month ago an email from Monolith. These are the people who make like Batman and Mythic Battles Pantheon, that said, hey, we have a bunch of these games and we'll give you free shipping if you buy it right now. We're celebrating this online store. And this is Claustrophobia 1643. So this is a 2-player only game where you play as either Hellspawn, evil demons that are coming out of the catacombs, or you play as the Redeemed. These are characters that are essentially prisoners of the church that are going to cleanse their souls by going and purging the Hellspawn from the catacombs. So you either play as a group of these Redeemed, or you play as the people that they're going to go redeem. So you're going into the catacombs and your goal is to survive. But the neatest thing about this is it's mission based. And as mentioned before, I played just an introductory mission the first time I played this. So I didn't get to see what the system could offer as a whole because it was extremely straightforward. Here are your 6 characters. You need to find this tile, go through this deck, do the basic exploration function. And then once you find it, you win the game. Awesome. Like I said before, this is introducing the mechanisms mostly. as you are using your dice to activate your different characters. You're going through this stack of tiles. But the thing that I didn't realize, and I got to experience now that we have a copy, I've played about 10 times at this point, is the scenario design is brilliant. So as you go through this, you'll open up a single page of a scenario, which is great. It's all in one spot. And then the scenario is going to have you taking a group of tiles, establishing whatever your parameters are, and then also assigning items to your different characters. So you'll have your items on the board that form up your team, and then your team has their own special abilities and characters. But that's just for one side. And then you have the villain who also has a similar setup. And by the time you're finished, these are not great pictures, by the way, but these pictures I'm finding, by the time you finish, you'll have a setup that has a tile with characters, and then you'll have your board of heroes versus the board of enemies. They're unique asymmetric sides with different dice placement mechanisms that function on both, but it's the creativity and the combination of powers, abilities, items, scenario-specific events that make the scenarios exciting and interesting. I love the different demons that are available that you can pick from. You have these characters that have their own unique dashboards, and you can summon them at a huge price, but they're going to impact the scenario when you do. So determining the timing of when you want to summon them. One of the biggest challenges that the demons face is having to navigate through the catacombs because they're coming from the depths. So there's some restrictions on how they can summon. And this is a way that the good characters can play around, but it's that anticipation and that feeling of the evil is coming. So I love that you are always trying to figure out when's the best time to drop these giant demons, as well as when it's okay to maybe let your heroes die or when you want to send them out. I think that the artwork is super cool. The theme is interesting, but it's that core gameplay and those different mechanisms and how you're doing the dice placement in tandem with the cool scenario specific effects and special powers and abilities that make this one a winner. Dan, have you seen this one? Has this been on your radar at all?
No, I've heard of it. I know nothing about it at all. So yeah, this is all news to me. So yeah, I don't know anything about the mechanisms or what it was about at all.
I wish I could find a good picture. I'm searching. The dice placement is so smart on as the heroes. Oh, this is pretty good. So as the heroes, you roll a set of dice equal to the number of characters you have, and you assign those to the characters. Where you assign them, the number determines their stats for the turn. So like their movement, their attack, and their defense values. Then you activate them, move around, then the enemies go. They roll their 3 dice, they assign them to their board, which has different abilities and ways to allocate, to either generate like spawn points because they are the hordes of the hell, so they can bring out as many characters as they want. So they're getting event cards, spawning, or granting their existing characters special abilities. So I love that concept of a limited resource on the human side going for that objective, and then this hellspawn trying to push them down as much as possible. It's such an awesome system, and it's one that I just want to play more of. It's become one of my go-to 2-player games at this point because of how streamlined the system is, actually, despite being this big gigantic game. So that's Claustrophobia 1643. It's back to life as a zombie here, and I'm so happy that it is. That's my number 4.
Brilliant.
All right, Dan, number 3. What do you got for me?
Yeah, so my number 3 is First Rat. So First Rat was actually a game that I think it came out last year, and I was initially really impressed with it. I still obviously am. But it was one of those games where when I first acquired it, I played it quite a bit, and then my desire waned quite a lot to get it back off the table. Not like I liked it any less, it's just that it wasn't hitting the table anymore because I felt like I'd got my fix. I actually ended up selling this one. And as I don't know, I probably sold it about a year or so ago, and over that year, I just had this itch to get it back, and I really wanted to start to miss it really, and that very, very rarely happens for me. And recently, I ended up picking it back up, and I just started to see how neat of a game this is, because it strikes this really great balance between being accessible but still having enough going on to be interesting. The rule set itself is so simple, just moving these rats up a track basically. I'm collecting resources, trading them in to get points, racing to be the first up the top of the track, collecting powers, increasing your little yields to get more resources. But all these things together just come together so nicely, and it scales really well. It looks great, and again, these kind of games are the ones that hit the table for me. And it's in fact, it's almost unheard of, apart from one other to come on this list, that I reacquire a game. So the fact that I felt strong enough to cull it and then strong enough to get it back, I think is the strongest example of a zombie, I suppose. So really recommend this one. Don't be deceived by maybe the childish artwork, because although it looks great, you might think it's a kids game. It's not. It's actually quite, I wouldn't say an involved Euro, but it's got quite a bit going on, and more than maybe first meets the eye. So that is First Rat.
So this is a game that my friend Ashley has been trying to get me to play for a while. She says that there's some unique mechanisms that you just don't see anywhere else. What is she talking about? What are the unique mechanisms in this one?
Trying to think on the spot. I can't really think of anything completely unique.
At least, what is something that sticks out to you as being a strong mechanism? I would say something that keeps you coming back.
Well, I like the fact that you're somewhat incentivized. Well, there's lots of different ways you can approach this. There's tons of different ways that you can get points, and all of them are completely viable. But one thing I really like about this game is that there's the track itself, and there's these light bulbs that follow the track up, and you're moving a separate token up those light bulbs, and up to that where that light bulb finishes, I think your yield, the actual resources you get from the spot you land on, is increased. So it's really cool that you can push that up as far as you want and really start to get tons of resources, or you can completely ignore that. But it's just an extra little wrinkle to the game that I thought was really clever, and one that I don't think I've ever seen that before, where you are getting the track is the actual main track itself, but it's following it behind, and yeah, it just makes your resources easier to get up to that point. So yeah, a really cool little mechanism there, I thought. It's hard to explain.
All right. Maybe that's what makes it so interesting, is that it's the doing that's exciting. But looking forward to trying this one. First Rat. Any tips on my first game?
No. I always seem to be surprised. Like, I always think like just racing to the top is going to be the most beneficial, but no, I've seen it won in loads of different ways. But there's a really cool mechanism as well, actually, where you can stop off at these little shops to get these little bonuses.
Okay.
And you can either pay for I think you pay cheese to get some upgrades, or you can steal the upgrade and just start again from the beginning without paying. So that was quite funny.
I'm into it. So that is First Rat. That's Dan's number 3. All right, moving on to my number 3. This one is my favorite game from this designer. I forget his name, but the designer is Stan Kordonsky. This is my favorite game from Stan Kordonsky. Big game designer. He's got several popular titles out there, but I think this is the best one. And I played this again recently, and it blew my socks off. I'm like, why am I not playing this game all the time? Because of one core mechanism. But that's the biggest feature of the game. We'll talk about it in a second. But the first thing here is the game itself is Lockup, a role player tale. Now, this is in the role player universe. It's the Dungeons and Dragon character building game that's spun off into its own universe. But in Lockup, a role player tale, you are locked up. You're going to be in a prison, and it's your goal to try to become the coolest prisoner so that you get let out. That's how prisons work in this fantasy world. So that's what we're going to roll with. So you're going to be taking your crew and sending them to different areas, gathering resources, trading those resources in for items. And these items will give you abilities, different things for set collection, matching. At its core, I shouldn't like this game at all. It's a basic as heck contract fulfillment game. You're getting resources and then turning those resources into item. I don't like games like that. I think they're super boring. But this game, the priority is not on that. The priority is on the placement of your characters, as this is a hidden worker placement game. At the start of each round, you're going to be taking your tiles, your crew members, and you get to place 2 of them face down into the different areas, and as many as you want the other ones are all face up. So you put them face down, 2 face down, and then the rest face up. When you play to an area, though, you have only one opportunity to play in each area. So if I decide to play something into this green area and I'm trying to win those green resources, I need to place as many as I can right now to guarantee it. But turn order is huge, because if somebody plays there, they can't commit again. So you're thinking about what they potentially put face down, or if they put it face up, why they put it face up. Do they not care about this? And you are trying to manage your characters as much as possible, putting them into different areas, trying to win the majorities, because if you can eke out a win with as little commitment as possible, it's one of the most satisfying feelings possible. Getting 3 resources instead of 1 feels so good if you put a single tile there. It reminds me a lot of the sensation of Dune Imperium, where you put out like a single worker in the battle, whatever is happening in the center, and you're able to get a shower of rewards. It's so gratifying. But this game is 75% that. So I love that you are just, every single movement is you deciding where to put these workers workers in the different areas. Stan Kordonsky has several games that have this feature of the action programming is exciting. One example is Rurik, Dawn of Kiev, where you are doing a auction programming system. And I think that's the most interesting part of that game, but it's also not the majority of that game. I'm doing all this other stuff that I don't find as interesting, and that's taking up the majority of my time. But in this game, that worker placement, the hidden worker placement in the different areas, that's exciting. That is the core thing that's keeping me coming back. And it's a rush. It's a rush, and I just want to play more of this just to get that sensation of the placement. And then when you finish, you want to restart because that sensation is so entrancing. So let's lock up a role player tale. Have you played this? Have you played any of the role player games?
I've not played any of them though, but I've kind of got the impression that they are quite cult favorites. Like they're generally favorably looked on. They kind of seem to be a bit of a steady bunch of games where I think all of them are quite highly considered. So I'd give it a go. I like the idea of that kind of hidden deployment. What is it, like kind of a bluffing mechanism? Is it? So you're trying to
Yes, definitely a bluffing mechanism, because you're only putting out one token at a time, and you have the choice to put them face down or face up. So you can show your hand, but then you also can put things face down so that people aren't sure of how to commit and where to commit. And I think the biggest twist here is the fact that once you've committed to an area, you can't commit more. So you have one shot to commit to a section and then show what you got. Do you just show your giant display of force? And there's also ways that you can manipulate the strength of your different characters. So there's a resource that you can claim that will power up some of your tiles. And then the expansion adds some additional tiles, so you have more workers to place during that time. Oh, so good.
Yeah. No, I like stuff like that. There's a game that has a similar mechanism that in my collection called East, which is that kind of, you can put face up or face down, kind of fill in the gaps. Are they putting it here? Are they putting it there? It's a really cool mechanism.
I might need to try that one then, because if it's that same sensation, how much percentage of the game would you say it is?
Oh, a huge portion.
Whew. Okay, so that's on my to play list. Yes, awesome. So that's number 3. That is lock up a role player tale. All right, Dan, what do you got for number 2 for me for your board game zombie?
Yeah, so number 2 is another real pioneer of my collection. I think this is probably one of the first 2-player games that I picked up, and probably if you end up Googling which 2-player board games to pick up, this is one of the first ones that will pop up on that list, and that is Patchwork.
Oh.
And Patchwork is a game that, and I've had for absolutely years and years and years. I've always appreciated that kind of dual, not just the polyomino, but the actual economic factor of it, with the buttons and when you get replenished and what, I really like that part of the game. But I think this is one of those games that could easily just fall out of favor because it's a fairly subdued game. It's not in your face. It's not overly on the edge of your seat exciting, but it is really well put together, and I think it's got that hallmark of quality that keeps it coming back. And again, I went for a very long time without playing this game, probably even played a ton of polyomino games in that gap. And like we said earlier, if a game is hitting the table again and still feeling really good and like a quality game, that goes to show that it is a quality game, because there's so much competition, especially in that polyomino genre, and this is still one of the best ones, I think. Because of that button mechanism, it's just really well designed. 2-player game, very accessible, 20 to 30 minutes to play. It's just fantastic. So Patchwork, highly recommend this to anybody who wants a good 2-player puzzly game in their collection.
I agree fully. I can't recommend it enough, honestly. One of my favorite things about Patchwork is how it pushes you to make bad plays because of the button economy. That's my favorite thing. A lot of times you'll see the perfect piece, but it's outrageously expensive or it doesn't give you any button income. So you take the crappy piece and make it work. And then if you win, it feels so good. So I love that. That concept of you are giving yourself restrictions in order to obtain value in the moment, and then seeing how it plays out later. And just the display, the array, the planning of what's coming up in the future, and the positioning of the pieces that are available for your opponent as well. Several things to think about in addition to your own puzzle. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, that player interaction of what opportunities to leave to your opponents. Thinking, the one you might want might be 4th or 5th along. So if you just move one spot, your opponent can only take the next 3, and then you get the next one that you were looking forward to. But yeah, there's a great game arc in this one where, as you said, like you could be doing horribly to start with, but you start to kind of invest in that button economy, and the second half of the game you can really start pulling back. I think it's a sublime game, really, and I think it's an evergreen.
I agree with you. I also love the way, I think this does the time track, one of the best ways I've ever seen, because of the integration of income as well as the patches. So there are
Yeah.
reasons to wait, there are reasons to rush, because this is the only way to get the singleton pieces, which can fill in those spots on your patch work. And if you are planning on getting one of those, you have to make sure it happens. And sometimes the tiles can restrict you, and maybe you take a auto pass turn where you can set yourself up to automatically take one in exchange for extra buttons. So there are reasons to do all of the different plays, and then also ways to set yourself up for success with that planning. God, it's such a good game. Good choice.
It is actually, yeah, just talking about it now, it's got me quite excited. And I played this game, 50, 60 times, and I still want to play it.
Agreed. Totally. Yep.
Yeah.
This is a absolute evergreen, I would say. Keeper, can't recommend it enough.
Yeah.
Sweet. That is Dan's number 2. That is Patchwork. All right, moving on to my number 2. First time I played this game was in Hawaii with a friend, Albert and Michelle, and they taught me, and it immediately made me think, why am I not playing this game and a bunch of other games? Why am I playing those games? I should be playing this game right now. And then I didn't touch it for maybe 5 or 6 years. I completely forgot about it existed, and then it showed up one day, and I was like, ooh, I think I like this game. And this is actually a recommendation that I had to you. And I think you also love this game. This is Keyflower. Now, Keyflower is one of the best combinations of auctioning, worker placement, and tile placement. It takes all of these concepts, puts them together in a streamlined, clean, and clear package. And Keyflower it's a beaut. It's everything that I want from this style of interaction but also personal management game. So if you're unfamiliar with Keyflower, the point of this is to get the most points. And the way you get points is by putting tiles in front of you with scoring opportunities. At the start of the game, you get to see a couple of these tiles, and those are going to guide your strategies because you determine the tiles that populate the board during the last round. So you have planning from the very initial start of the game, and then the choices that you make involve building towards those end game positions. So as you play, you are going to have all of these tiles that are out in the center of the table. On your turn, you have workers at your disposal. It's your currency, and it's up to you to decide what to do with these workers. You either are going to place them on the tiles themselves, and that's going to trigger their effects, getting you resources, getting special abilities, more types of currency, special powers, or you are going to place them on the side of the tiles in order to auction for them. And it's brilliant the way that the spatial alignment is placed because you put them towards you. They're hexagons. And so whatever side that it's facing you, that's your auction side. And so it's clear to see who is going for what tiles. So cool. I love stuff like that. But then you have the option to place workers on any and every tile that's out there. Your tiles that you've already gathered in front of you, tiles that are being auctioned currently, tiles that are in other players' areas. And the kicker here is every meeple is color-coded, and as soon as you place a meeple, it becomes locked to that color for that action. So if somebody has a tile they're trying to use, you can play something of a color they don't have to stop them from using that tile. Sure, they get your worker at the end of the round if it's in their city, but you've locked them out of it for the entire round. But you also may want to auction tiles because then you could set the color for the auction, or you may want to use your own things. You want to do everything. You want to do every single thing at every single moment of this game because you know that you need to do it so you can build for that end game scoring all the time. This is the most positive stress I've ever felt in a game, and it's all the time. And it happens, the flow of this game is great. The arc of the powers and abilities of the tiles and the scaling towards that final reveal of your scoring. I love Keyflower. I think that this is one of the best experiences you can have in this genre of games, and I'm so happy you've gotten a chance to try it. Shout this one of the rooftops. I can't believe that I didn't play it for so long. Amazing game, Keyflower.
Yeah, this game is a masterpiece. Yeah, it's unbelievably good, and it's one of those games, as you said, you don't realize how many mechanisms are in it because it is so smooth. It really is a kitchen sink style game. As you mentioned, you got tile placement, you've got worker placement, you've got bidding, you've even got like a little bit of pick 'em and deliver as you're moving resources around your board. All of this is so cohesively, like, it's so easy to play, you wouldn't believe it. And it's a top 5 game for me. I think it's just unbelievably good.
Agreed. And there's so many smart design choices with just the construction of it as well. I see it in other games all the time where several components are used for different things. In this case, your scoring, your auctions, your round bonuses also become pieces that you can place into your city and things to plan for. And it evolves with the players. Tiles will flip. Nothing is wasted. No space is wasted. Every bit of option and choice is explored. If you haven't already, give Keyflower a try. This is one of the best games out there, I think.
Yeah, completely agree. Yeah.
So that is Keyflower, my number 2. But this brings us to our number 1, our biggest board game zombie, our abomination, if you will. Number 1, Dan, what do you got for me?
Yeah, so my number 1, I think, is one that you've only played recently, which I believe you love, and that well, it's one of my favorite games now, which is Ra. So Ra is
Hey, nice.
this is the biggest kind of comeback story in my gaming, in my gaming life, really. So I got this maybe 4 years ago, 5 years ago. I always liked it. A lot of my gaming group were somewhat, I don't know, I got the impression they weren't huge on it. But I actually ended up selling my copy, which is absolutely mad considering that this is now like a top 10 game for me. But it kind of slowly crept up. I ended up getting it back. And then I think maybe one of the things that stopped me really enjoying it as much as it could have done is because I picked up a foreign language version of it. So it didn't quite have the ease of play because it was quite hard to get hold of maybe a couple of years ago. So I had a French version. And then now I've got this new version. It's just like, this game is unbelievably good. It's so clever. It's from the late 90s. It's another bidding game. But you're just using these tokens to collect sets. This all simple scoring stuff. But I love the fact that in this game you have those fixed bids on how to just weight those bids just perfectly to get the most you can from them. That little push your luck element to it as well, as you have a limited time to get your bids in or just waste the whole turn essentially. It's just everything I want in a 45-minute game. And again, this is like a top 10 game for me now, where a couple of years ago it wasn't even in my collection after having been in it before. So again, I said with First Rat, it's almost unheard of that I'll sell a game and end up picking it back up. This one, not only did I sell it, pick it back up, it also worked its way up into my top 10. So that's how much I think of Ra now, and that kind of redemption arc, I suppose. So it was a no-brainer for me for this to be my number 1. That's Ra.
God, Ra's so good. I love this. You can feel a lot of the other design concepts from Reiner Knizia. One of my favorite games from him is High Society, and this takes a lot of those concepts and puts them into this interesting system. And in particular, I like the negative event tiles, where as you play, some tiles are awful. They might make you discard some of your types of scoring, and then you factor that into the costs. And it's something that the table determines, and you all are deciding the value, and it's also stuck to those fixed value tokens. So you may end up overpaying for something dramatically, or maybe you get something super cheap because it happens to be terrible for everybody else, and then this is your time to push it and make it go further. So many cool choices, and it's going to be variable from game to game, but I think you hit a awesome point here with the fact that it is 45 minutes. This is a game that you can play out, have an awesome time with, put away, and feel so satisfied that you've made so many great choices. The arc is awesome as you're constantly building up the tiles for those 3 separate instances of scoring. I love this game. I think it's amazing. And this new edition is crazy cool. I love it.
Yeah. I think it's a remarkable game. And yeah, I love it as well. So that's my number 1.
Great choice. So that is Ra, Dan's number 1 board game zombie. Now, this one, I won't belabor the point too much, but this is probably the biggest out of left field for me, as it is a huge, epic, conquering style game where you're controlling huge forces and armies. It's a game I played for maybe 4 times in a row with some friends, as well as my wife Ariana, back when we were in Hawaii. So this is also 6-7 years ago. And when we played, it was just okay. We didn't really get into it that much, but the game itself, now that I've gotten a chance to play with it some more and put more dedicated time to it, and the theme is so rich. This is Star Wars Rebellion. Star Wars Rebellion is one of my favorite 2-player games ever. If I have the time to play it, this is the one I'm going to play. I've played it about 12, 13 times in the past like 3 or 4 months, and I just want to play more of it. And I want to just keep on exploring and playing, and it's still gripping me that many plays in, which is insane, I think. And so Star Wars Rebellion has you playing the arc of the first 3 Star Wars movies. I guess technically 4, 5, and 6. So you play 4, 5, and 6, but you can also play with the Rogue One story as well, which I do recommend. The expansion's awesome. But you are trying to, as the Empire, hunt down the rebels. And if you find them, you win. Your goal is to, well, you have to kill the rebel base. So you got to kill the rebel base. That's your goal. But if you are the rebels, you're trying to garner sympathy for the rebellion. And if you can make these 2 markers meet, like the time marker plus your objective marker, then you win. And it's a race to do so. It takes the concepts of hidden movement games and allows you to adjust the scales on them and determine how you want to play it. So at its core, it's a hidden movement game. You're trying to cat and mouse, trying to find the other person. Now, as you play, you are, as the rebels, trying to complete these small objectives. And these objectives are going to explore the game space and design as you go from different planet to planet, making tactical strikes and playing long-term strategies to complete some of these more obscure objective cards. For example, your objective might be you need to make sure that a specific type of ship explodes in a battle. So that's your new target. You're going to build up forces, try to make that happen. Or maybe you have to have a planet with a specific type of building on it. So that's what you're doing. You're looking for planets that produce that, moving these things around to try to fulfill your objectives. A lot of your cards that you're going to be using allow you to gain planning for future turns. And so this is a huge scope as you are playing in the moment to fulfill these long-term objectives. But where on the other side, as the Empire, you have to find that base. And if you can find the base, you win if you have the manpower to just destroy it. And so your goal is to, with your magnifying glass, make it as big as possible, because you can generate more production on planets, get more ships, explore more things to try to make your net as big as you can. And once you find that planet, you either go in for the kill with your different units, or maybe you have a Death Star that's nearby and you can just auto destroy it with a laser. So it has this concept of allowing you to adjust your hidden movement mechanisms, but does so thematically, where your cards and the characters that you're using all offer you things that exist in the Star Wars universe while being exciting and fun. You have a programming step at the beginning where you place your different leaders on these mission cards, and then after both players have programmed, you take an action at a time, revealing these different cards and going back and forth. You are always engaged in the game. There's no downtime, essentially, as you are doing this programming simultaneously, and then it's one action back and forth. So it takes this concept of a gigantic long game, but you're always engaged. You're always playing. And so it's one game that when you start playing, you never stop. And that's a sensation that I think more games need to adopt, where if you are committing time, you better be playing that entire time. And it does it here thematically, excitingly, and the different characters. It's so good. I love Star Wars Rebellion. If you have any interest in Star Wars, you need to try this game. If you have a person that's willing to play a game like this, because it is long. The game is about 3 hours base, and it can get longer based on the sides, the familiarity, and just how the gameplay goes. The decisions you make are going to affect the game state. But can't recommend this one higher. This has become one of my new favorites. Very similar to with Raw. It has, I think this one is going to be pushing into my top 20, maybe top 10. This is awesome. It's my go-to if I can play it.
Wow. Yeah, I have played this game many, many years ago. I can barely remember it, to be honest, but I do remember enjoying it, and that's even coming from me. I'm not a big Star Wars guy, so I think that goes to show there's a good game here, and it's not just all, it's not just all, all sizzle and no steak. It's actually a very, very good game. So I'd give it another go. I think, yeah, the time was a bit of an issue. It's a long game, but yeah, I mean, if you're a Star Wars fan, what else could you want, really?
I'm always looking for games that hit those categories. For example, Dune. I think Dune Imperium is an accessible Dune game. That's awesome. That's so cool. There's an amazing Dune game out there. And Star Wars Rebellion is that big, epic Star Wars game that I wanted to find. And it's perfect. I think that I wouldn't change a thing about this system at all. I think it takes the concept and puts it perfectly into gameplay format. So if you have any recommendations of games like that fit that theme and belong in a library that embody that, let us know in the comments. Let us know here. And Dan, if you have any suggestions, always willing to hear, for incredibly thematic, but also those mechanisms have to be on point. I don't play bad games. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, it's been a long time since I played this one, but it's obviously held up. And I think it's on a BGG top 10 as well, isn't it? It's a very, very popular game.
I think that this will become, if you do play it again, another board game zombie for you, I'm sure.
Maybe, perhaps.
So that's my number one. That is Star Wars Rebellion. And that's the list. Those are our top 10 board game zombies. We'd love to hear what you think and your top 10 board game zombies down in the comments below. What do you think about our picks here? Dan, anything that stuck out on this list? Something that you don't agree with? Any honorable mentions?
No, not at all. I think it was quite a nice diverse list there. And as I said, I didn't really have any honorable mentions that popped to mind, but I'm sure there's something I've forgotten about, and I'll think later, oh, I should have said that. But yeah, I'm happy with my 5, and yeah, it was a good list. Really enjoyable.
Sounds good to me. Any games that you, after talking about this zombie vacation, any games that you think that you might want to give another try to? Any games that you're like, maybe I should give that one more try just to see?
Yeah, there was actually quite a few. There was one that I think I would appreciate now called, I don't know if you've heard of this, not called the Battle of Rokugan, something like that.
Oh, yeah. Battle for Rokugan, the Legend of the Five
Yeah,
Rings one.
Rokugan. Yeah, that one. At the time, I was quite underwhelmed because it was so minimalistic, but I think now I probably appreciate it. So I wouldn't mind giving that one another go. Also, one called Medina, an abstract game by Stefan Dora. I want to try that one again, as well as Through the Desert as well. I've been a long time since I played that, but I think they are reprinting it soon.
They are going to reprint that one with some new art.
Yeah. So I'll give that one another go as well.
Awesome.
How about you?
Ooh, for me, a game that I want to try again. Nothing really stands out. I play the games that I like a lot. So I'm in a position where I get to play games all the time. And that means that I get to bring out my favorites and continue playing them. I don't think and usually if a game is bad, I'll give it multiple tries to make sure it's bad. Maybe I did miss something on that first play, but I don't think there's anything that sticks out. I'll be honest with you. Nothing that I'm like, ooh, I need to play that again. Nope. Pretty good.
No, that's fair. We're so spoiled for choice that we don't need to. If it's not singing from the first play, then move on. There's another 1,000 brilliant games that you can play and enjoy each time.
Agreed. And one last thing, if you haven't already, please make sure that you are checking out Dan's channel over at Chairman of the Board. Subscribe for his content. He always is putting out videos, and I'm looking forward to each one as they drop. So make sure that you check out his channel and share your excitement in all of the different board games. And Dan, once again, what's another video that you're looking forward to coming out soon?
So yeah, I've got Dragon Keeper's review. I've got Wild Tile West review. I've got the Rich and the Good review coming out. I've got a new ranking video coming out soon. So yeah, loads of stuff. And I want to start doing some more top 10s. Yeah, I need to get going on that already. Is
the ranking video just some of the games you've been playing, or like for a specific game?
No, it's for the 10 most recent ones.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
I have a ranking video that I'm working on right now for Voidfall. I'm going to rank all the different factions available in that game. I have one last faction to play, and then I can give my thoughts on the entire package and which characters to try out. So that's been one that's been on my table for like the last 3 weeks, just playing so much Voidfall. I love that one. Super good.
Okay.
Oh, gosh.
I decided I was a bit daunted by that one, so I decided to sell it before playing it. Yeah.
Really? Oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So long and heavy.
Gotcha. The competitive version is not my favorite, but the solo and co-op are perfect. I love it.
Okay.
It's exactly what I was looking for. And then one last thing before we close out our stream, if you do want to support the channel, there's a bunch of links down in the description that you can to do so. Subscribe if you haven't. And if you'd like to, you can also go through Into the AM, our channel partner, to get some shirts if you want to do something non-board game related. Use promo code SideGameStrong. It'll get you 10% off your order, as well as give our channel direct kickback. But that's it. That's our stream. I want to give a big thank you to our viewers, people who are here live. Scott, yo, thank you for being here and watching us live. And for all of you coming to the channel later, let us know your board game zombies and which games that we should be giving a try if we just didn't have a great time, if you know our tastes and that we should give another chance to become potential zombies in the future. Dan, I hope you have a great rest of your spooky season, and it's awesome to see you. Thank you so much for being on the channel. David, thank you for being here and joining us on the stream. And yeah, thank you so much. Side Game Strong, y'all.
Thank you for having me. Bye-bye.